Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Martha Ninachuk, Director of the Office of Credit Union Resources and Expansion, also known as CURE. I call this public hearing for Dade County Federal Credit Union to order. I will be the presiding officer overseeing and conducting this public hearing. First, I'd like to review a couple of housekeeping items. If you'd like to review the closed captioning of this meeting, please click on the CC icon located in the lower left of the WebEx window. You may also change the layout to one of your choosing by clicking the layout option on the top right side of your screen. Our recommended viewing option for this meeting is the stack view. I want to note for the record that the NCUA will take minutes and record this meeting, which will provide an administrative record to allow the agency to consider comments presented at the hearing along with those submitted in writing. A recording will also be published on NCUA's YouTube channel for public viewing in approximately 2 weeks. Next, I would like to review the following. The materials presented in this public hearing are the opinions and views of the presenters. The NCUA, however, makes no warranty, express or implied, nor assumes any legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, correctness, or completeness of any information that is available through this presentation, nor represents that its use would not infringe on privately owned rights. The slides are intended for informational purposes and do not constitute legal advice nor replace independent professional judgment. Reference to any specific commercial product, process, or services by trade name, trademark, manufacturer, or otherwise does not constitute an endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by the U.S. government or the NCUA. Again, welcome to the public hearing for Dade County Federal Credit Union's Community Charter Expansion Application. On November 8th, 2022, Dade County Federal Credit Union submitted their application to expand their community charter to include Broward County, Florida, in addition to serving Miami-Dade County, Florida. The population of the proposed community is 4.6 million people, according to 2021 5-year ACS, which is the American Community Survey estimates. In the Chartering and Field of Membership Final Rule, which was effective September 1st, 2018, the NCUA board determined that it is appropriate to require a public hearing along with opportunity for comment for charter applications with multiple political jurisdictions with potential populations in excess of 2.5 million people. The public hearing will last no longer than 4 hours, with interested parties being permitted to make presentations of no more than 30 minutes each. Each panelist will receive a 2-minute warning towards the end of the 30-minute period. Only 8 people may make a presentation, which includes the applicant and 7 other interested parties. In addition to the presentations, interested parties were afforded the opportunity to submit written and comment statements to NCUA at least 20 business days prior to this hearing. That deadline was May 10th, 2023. We will not be taking any questions from the audience or comments during this public hearing. We have 8 interested parties who will present their views on the community expansion application. I'd like to introduce them now. They are George Joseph, President and Chief Executive Officer, Dade County Federal Credit Union; Chris Tissue, Chief Operations Officer, CU Collaborate; Andrew Morris, Senior Counsel, National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions, NAFCU; Patrick Lapine, Chief Executive Officer, League of Southeastern Credit Unions and Affiliates; Rod Skirvin, President, Broward County PBA; Robert Fenner, President and Chief Executive Officer, RMF Consulting LLC; Danya Dorman, Chief Executive Officer, African American Credit Union Coalition; and Jules Epstein Hebert, Director of Membership Growth and Partnership Inclusive. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to our first presenter, Mr. George Joseph, President, CEO of Dade County FCU.
Thank you, Ms. Ninachuk. As Ms. Ninachek said, my name is George Joseph. If we could go to the second page, please. My name is George Joseph. I'm the president and CEO of Dade County Federal Credit Union. Uh, as with every business entity, we at Dade County Federal have a mission statement. The difference is we truly operate at a level that assures our members that we believe and adhere to this mission statement, and that is to deliver the highest level of service by providing solutions to your financial needs, your being, of course, the members. If we could continue to the next slide. A little history about Dade County Federal Credit Union. The credit union was founded in 1939 at the beginning of World War II. 10 Dade County employees pooled together $135 in an old cigar box and signed a certificate of origination to form a credit union for their fellow employees. It was owned by its members as a not-for-profit and operated exclusively by volunteers for many years in the Dade County Courthouse. The first paid employee was actually hired in 1950, and our total assets reached $1 million in 1958. Dade County Federal has suffered wars, real estate booms and busts, hurricanes, heat waves, and the Great Recession. If we could continue on to the next slide. Now, Dade County Federal, just some more history. Dade County Federal became a federally chartered institution in 1994. In 1995, the main branch and headquarters was officially opened at 1500 Northwest 107th Avenue in Western Miami-Dade. Today, our total assets exceed $1 billion. We're about $1.3 billion, and we have over 101,000 members. We have 11 branches, one of which is actually a fully operated mobile satellite branch with an ATM, room for tellers and loan officers. And in times of disaster, we have been able to deploy this mobile branch to areas of need within the community, and it has come in very useful in the past. We could go on to the next slide. Now, we at Dade County have partnered with the community we serve. We always have. And I'd like to highlight a few of the programs that we've contributed to in the past 12 months. We've given 43, these are just some of the examples. Of course, most of these items, or all of these items and more, are included in the actual full field of membership expansion package submitted to the NCUA. Just some of the community impacts that we've had, to highlight a few. We've given $43,000 to the Overtown Youth Center. This is an entrepreneurship summer accelerator program that is tailored towards students between the age of 14 and 15. We've also donated $10,000 to Dream Makers for Life. This program creates dream packages filled with supplies that encourage critically ill children to be creative and dream about their futures. We've donated $60,000 to Touching Miami with Love to build a new playground for the children of one of the communities in Miami-Dade County. We fundraised over $8,000 in August alone for the Children's Miracle Network to benefit Nicklaus Children's Hospital. We raised $7,500 last year for the American Cancer Society, and we plan on doing this again in 2023. In 2022, our Gen U, a group organized to work with young adults, worked with more than 4,000 Miami-Dade County public school students, teaching them more than 150 financial literacy workshops. We've also raised over $50,000 for the Police Benevolent Association and the Hispanic Police Officers Association. In addition to that, we also raised $37,000 to support 3 of our local high schools. So again, as you can see, and again, this is just to highlight some of the major contributions or impact that we've had on the community. If we could go on to the next page. Here's why we feel that the expansion process is necessary and will work in our situation. Miami-Dade and Broward County are part of the same combined statistical area, or CSA, which normally would make an expansion to Broward County simple, as they're considered one community, Miami-Dade and Broward County. But Broward has over 2.5 million residents, which is why we must go through this process and this we have to go through this open hearing process. Dade County Federal Credit Union already has branches near the Dade/Broward County line. So it has we also have an extensive shared branching and ATM footprint in Broward County, making it convenient for Broward County residents to use our electronic services. It should be also noted that Dade County Federal exists physical branches, or we have physical branches that cover nearly the entirety of Broward County using the NCUA's definition of a service facility radius of 25 miles. Nearly 60% of all of the commuters in the two counties work in Miami-Dade County, which is more than twice the requirement by the NCUA, which is 25%. Our net worth currently stands at 11.5%. This shows that the financial ability to invest in the proposed area should not be any issue to us at all. If we could go on to the next slide. Our close connection to Broward County, just a little bit of history here. While Miami-Dade County has grown significantly in population since our founding, Broward County, on the other hand, has exploded. Miami-Dade County's population in 1940 was 267,000 or thereabouts. Today it's 2.7 million, which is more than 10 times the amount of 1940. In Broward County in 1940 was 40,000 or so residents, and this has increased 50-fold, as in 50, to 1.9 million. Many of our members, though, have migrated north, and our counties are tightly linked, which makes this expansion a necessity for Dade County Federal Credit Union. And if we could go to the final page. We regularly turn away right now our members or would-be members from Broward County who want to become members of Dade County Federal and are eligible because they either live, work, or worship in Miami-Dade County. We currently own branches that are less than 1 mile from the Dade-Broward County line, and we will undertake significant investments in the form of physical infrastructure improvements, increased marketing investments, especially, and additional personnel expenses to service that area, or the one area, namely Miami-Dade and Broward County. We will also expand existing community involvement activities, which I've mentioned before, in Broward County, leading volunteer initiatives, financial education efforts, and sponsorships of community events and community organizations, as I've mentioned previously. If approved, we will truly treat both Miami-Dade and Broward County as it really is, one community. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Chris Tissue, Chief Operations Officer, CU Collaborate, to present.
Thank you. Is this next slide shows? I'm sorry, the next one. Thank you. My name is Chris Tissue. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Consulting for CU Collaborate LLC. In the area in question here, I have substantial experience supporting federal credit unions like Dade County Federal Credit Union through the field of membership expansion process and other regulatory matters. More specifically, I've led a team of consultants who have demonstrated success supporting narrative applications like the one that Dade County Federal Credit Union submitted as part of this expansion effort. And if we could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. It's my understanding that the focus of this meeting is on Dade County Federal Credit Union's case that Miami-Dade County and Broward County, Florida demonstrate a common community bond through, as the NCUA calls it, common interest and interaction. The way that this is accomplished for communities over 2.5 million in population is through the narrative application process, as well as this public hearing today. In my review of the provided materials that accompanied the Federal Register, Dade County Federal Credit Union clearly demonstrates a common bond through common interest and interaction across the prescribed regulations. The credit union accomplished this by providing documentation and specific details to support the relevance of that documentation in their application section. Specifically, this looked like 50+ pages of cited sources, detailed explanatory narrative linking the evidence that they provided back to the regulatory review criteria. Next slide, please. Thank you. In Appendix 6 of the Chartering Manual, the NCUA establishes criteria for the narrative categories and adjudication methods it will use in assessing whether a proposed community demonstrates common interest and interaction supporting a common bond. The most important factor is a credit union's ability to establish a central economic hub through the assessment of primarily commuting flow data. An economic hub is evident when one political jurisdiction, which is a city or county, in this case, Miami-Dade County, within a proposed local community has a relatively large percentage of the community's population or is the primary location for employment. As the guidance states, the presence of a central economic hub provides significant opportunities for the residents to interact or share common interests. It is the most persuasive criterion because a common employment center promotes other activities such as shopping, healthcare, and recreation, while also serving as a focal point for major events and local media coverage. The most persuasive criteria is when at least 25% of the workers living in the proposed community commute to work in the central economic hub. As George Joseph just cited in his presentation as well, using the approved data set and the methodology prescribed by the NCUA, 59.7% of the workers living in the proposed community, and this is instance Miami-Dade County, do commute, in Miami-Dade and Broward County do commute into the central economic hub of Miami-Dade County. This is more than double than the NCUA's 25% threshold for the most persuasive and should have an outsized impact on the adjudication of this section as the most important criteria. Based on my assessment of the other categories, 10 of the 12 met either the most persuasive or persuasive evaluation criteria outlined in the NCUA guidance. These include the following sections: quasi-government agencies, governmental designations, shared public services and facilities, colleges and universities, mutual aid agreements, organizations and clubs, community newspaper, entertainment and sporting events, local TV and radio, and finally, geography. While the NCUA does not provide publicly a threshold for how many categories must be considered persuasive or most persuasive to demonstrate common interest and interaction, this is the most compelling argument I personally have seen in terms of the central economic hub criteria and the number of additional categories that meet the persuasive or most persuasive review criteria. Miami-Dade County and Broward County clearly demonstrate common interest and interaction and exhibit a common bond. Finally, I want to commend Dade County Federal Credit Union for choosing this expansion path. While many other credit unions of their size are seeking relatively more defined expansion options by converting to, for example, a federal multiple common bond charter, Dade County Federal Credit Union's pursuit of this first-of-a-kind expansion demonstrate their unwavering commitment and focus on their community. Also, a final thank you to the NCUA for their work to navigate this uncharted territory and for hosting the public hearing today. With that, I'll turn it back over to Martha Ninachuk and the next presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Tissue. Next presenter is Mr. Andrew Morris, Senior Counsel, National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions. Mr. Morris?
Thank you, and good afternoon, and thanks for this opportunity to present at the hearing. My name is Andrew Morris, and I'm testifying on behalf of the National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions in the matter of Dade County Federal Credit Union's request to expand its field of membership. I currently serve as Senior Counsel for Research and Policy at NAFCU. My role at NAFCU involves evaluating field of membership regulations along with assisting NAFCU members in chartering, conversions, and expansions. Today's hearing and Dade County Federal Credit Union's application represent an important step towards putting modern and flexible field of membership expansion procedures into practice. Dade County Federal Credit Union has persuasively demonstrated through its application that it is able to meet the NCUA's requirements for narrative-based field of membership expansion. Accordingly, NAFCU supports Dade County's request to serve Broward County. We also support the NCUA demonstrating through a straightforward approval of Dade County Federal Credit Union's application that the narrative-based model can serve as a viable tool for helping federal credit unions grow and remain healthy. Although the NCUA once characterized narrative-based applications to expand or charter community federal credit unions as a cumbersome process, the agency has since recognized that narratives do offer important flexibility. The NCUA has also recognized that narrative applications, as an alternative to the presumptive community model, can expand the delivery of financial services to the public, particularly people from underserved communities, with no significant downside. NAFCU agrees. As mission-based, not-for-profit institutions, credit unions are committed to delivering affordable and safe financial products and services in the communities they serve. Community federal credit unions requesting to serve new populations with low-cost financial services can realize this commitment even more effectively through a fair and efficient adjudicative process for narrative-based applications. To provide some background, in 2018, the NCUA approved a final rule to grant community charter federal credit unions the option to submit applications using a narrative, with sufficient supporting documentation to establish the existence of a well-defined local community in cases where the proposed community has a population of 2.5 million or more, and the boundaries of the community extend beyond a single political jurisdiction. Dade County Federal Credit Union's application in this hearing represent the first time the agency has publicly considered a narrative-based expansion request through a public hearing since the rule was finalized 5 years ago. But it is not the first time the NCUA has accommodated a narrative-based application process. Before the NCUA made substantial revisions to its field of membership rule in 2010, the agency did not place a population limit on well-defined local communities, but rather focused on whether the proposed area had strong indicia of a community, including common interest and interactions between residents. Prior to 2010, federal credit unions could demonstrate these common interests and interactions through narrative-based documentation. However, when the NCUA temporarily discontinued the use of the narrative, its rationale at the time was that the additional flexibility afforded by this process would confuse and burden credit unions, despite many commenters at the time requesting at least the option to use a narrative. Fortunately, the NCUA's current rules give federal credit unions narrative-based flexibility once again. This flexibility is critical, given that there are many metropolitan areas evincing common interests and interactions that exceed the NCUA's population cap of 2.5 million for a core-based or combined statistical area or portion thereof. Furthermore, not every community will align perfectly with the boundaries of a presumptive statistical community defined by the NCUA. As the agency has observed in published guidance, each area is unique and has different fact patterns to support whether or not it is a well-defined local community. Dade County Federal Credit Union's application demonstrates that the area it seeks to serve is a well-defined local community based on the criteria set forth in Appendix 6 of the NCUA's Chartering and Field of Membership Manual. As an initial matter, the addition of Broward County to Dade County Federal Credit Union's existing field of membership represents the addition of a contiguous area within the boundaries of an existing statistical area, which the U.S. Census Bureau recognizes as the Miami-Fort Lauderdale-Pompano Metropolitan Statistical Area. Within this combined statistical area, Broward and Miami-Dade counties also reside with the same metropolitan statistical area. Based on relevant census definitions, these statistically defined areas exhibit a high degree of social and economic interconnection. While the NCUA has advised federal credit unions that the size and population of a proposed area may influence a determination of whether it constitutes a well-defined local community, it should be noted that some metropolitan statistical areas can be large geographically while being relatively small in terms of population, and vice versa. As part of the same MSA, Broward and Miami-Dade counties form a modestly sized area with clear economic and social cohesion. To offer just one example, the area is linked by the Tri-Rail commuter rail line, which joins Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. Tri-Rail had a pre-pandemic weekday average of 15,000 riders and 3 million riders used the shared rail service in 2022. As the NCUA observed in 2018 guidance regarding the use of the narrative approach, the most persuasive evidence supporting a well-defined local community usually comes from independent third-party sources. Dade County Federal Credit Union has supplied exactly this type of information in its application. Dade County Federal Credit Union has offered U.S. Census Bureau data to demonstrate, among other things, the existence of a central economic hub linking Broward and Miami-Dade counties. Dade County Federal Credit Union has also provided independent third-party data gathered from business journals, economic development organizations, and local government organizations to show how its application satisfies each of the NCUA's 13 narrative criteria. Lastly, Dade County Federal Credit Union has provided compelling evidence that it has both the ability and the intent to serve its requested community. For community federal credit unions, the NCUA's ultimate disposition of Dade County Federal Credit Union's application will be an important indicator of how the agency intends to accommodate narrative-based expansion requests going forward. In this regard, it is noteworthy that the NCUA originally anticipated around 25 narrative applications each year when it amended its chartering and field of membership rule in 2018. While a narrative application does involve more work than selecting a presumptive statistical community, the NCUA should signal today, through its consideration of Dade County Federal Credit Union's application, that the documentary requirements and analysis required is not an insurmountable obstacle to community federal credit union expansion. Based on NAFCU surveys, federal credit unions report a variety of field of membership challenges that stand in the way of growth in the communities they serve. In 2020, 19% of NAFCU members reported that an inability to expand into new areas, either due to regulatory or statutory constraints, was a significant field of membership challenge. In 2022, 21% of NAFCU members anticipated the slow economic growth within their credit union's existing field of membership would pose significant challenges over the next 3 years. NAFCU has also heard from community charter members that population limits for federal credit unions serving statistical areas represent a major obstacle. Without the ability for credit unions to grow organically by expanding their field of membership, particularly in metropolitan statistical areas that do not conform to presumptive community definitions, the industry risks further consolidation. The credit union industry has been shrinking for over 50 years. In the years following the passage of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, many small credit unions struggled to deal with an onslaught of regulation and opted for a merger. In the intervening years, 35% of credit unions have merged out of existence. Given these challenges and others, such as aging membership, it is important that the NCUA support credit union efforts to grow and remain strong. One way the NCUA can achieve this objective is by demonstrating that its narrative-based process represents a viable means of expansion that does not correspond with excessive administrative burden. The approval of Dade County Federal Credit Union's application may also have ancillary benefits. As noted in the NCUA's June 2018 rule, if a federal credit union has successfully established that an area is a well-defined local community through the narrative process, then another federal credit union may adopt the exact area as a well-defined local community without submitting a narrative of its own, provided it complies with the other requirements of the chartering manual, including submitting a business plan that demonstrates its ability to serve the proposed field of membership. By encouraging and efficiently adjudicating narrative applications, the NCUA will pave the way for more community federal credit unions to serve additional well-defined local communities. The NCUA should welcome federal credit union growth and expansion. Credit unions of all types are a positive influence in the communities they serve. Surveys of NAFCU members have consistently found that a large share of respondents sponsor financial literacy events in their communities by providing financial literacy curricula to local schools, offering financial coaching, and providing scholarships, among other things. In a 2022 NAFCU survey, a majority of NAFCU members said that employees had volunteered time in their communities, and nearly all said that their credit unions supported local nonprofit organizations. Credit unions also lend to borrowers in communities ignored by other lenders. Since 2011, credit unions have increased their share of loans to Black, Hispanic, female, and low to moderate income borrowers. Accordingly, NAFCU welcomes the use of a fair, adjudicative process to help community federal credit unions expand the reach of their services and positive influence to new communities and populations. In summary, Dade County Federal Credit Union has demonstrated through its application that it is more than capable of satisfying the NCUA's criteria for expanding its field of membership through a narrative-based approach. It has shown evidence of common interest and interactions in the requested area of Broward and Miami-Dade counties, and has shown that it is fully equipped to serve the needs of the proposed community. NAFCU asks that the agency grant Dade County Federal Credit Union's application to expand its field of membership. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Patrick Lapine, Chief Executive Officer, League of Southeastern Credit Unions and Affiliates, to present.
Thank you, and good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the NCUA for this opportunity to be able to testify at this public hearing in support of Dade Federal Credit Union's field of membership expansion into Broward County. First, just a little bit of background about who we are. The LSU and Affiliates is the regional trade association representing 300 credit unions in Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. I have been here as CEO since 2009, previously served with the Michigan Credit Union League for 10 plus years. For my last 14 years, I've worked very closely with Mr. Joseph and Dade County Federal Credit Union. Very familiar with this credit union and the good works they do within Dade, Miami-Dade County currently. So as you can imagine, during the pandemic, and I think it's no surprise to anyone who follows the news, we've seen tremendous growth down here in our population in Florida. Florida has been one of the fastest growing states and the fastest growing state in 2022 with folks relocating to Florida and in many cases looking towards South Florida as a home. And as you can see by the numbers on this slide here, the population growth that we've seen both in Miami-Dade as well as Broward has been above the national average from 2022, and actually over the last 12 years by the cumulative totals. Today, there's over 22.4 million residents in Florida. And as you can imagine, for people that live in Miami-Dade County, when they're looking for more affordable housing because of the tremendous growth we've seen here, less congestion, because we do have a lot of congestion in South Florida from a driving perspective, you really don't have an option to go east because that's the Atlantic Ocean. You really can't go west because that's the Everglades. So really your option for looking for more affordable housing, or if you want a bigger house or even a small business that wants to provide a new location that's more affordable, your only options is to really go north. And of course, that's Broward County. So it's not surprising that we're going to continue to see the migration of population and migration of current Dade County members to Broward County. And I think Dade County has demonstrated, and I think Mr. Josephs in his statements has made a compelling case for why Dade County Federal Credit Union is well positioned to continue to serve their members and new members that continue to migrate north looking for more affordable housing. This next slide that I've included real quickly just comes from the Florida Office of Financial Regulation. And I included this because I think it really demonstrates we have continued to see less and less contraction really of community banks in Florida. Credit unions, state chartered credit unions have stayed pretty consistent. Currently today, we have about 67 state chartered credit unions in Florida with 58 federally chartered credit unions. So as we have continued to see this contraction of community banks in Florida, it's very important for credit unions to be able to continue to be able to serve those former community bank members and continue to make sure that we do not have bank deserts. So I think that this expansion will allow Dade, as well as other credit unions, hopefully in the future that will look for the same opportunities to continue to make sure that we're serving all of our residents of Florida and hopefully more new residents of Florida well. The next slide I have included as well, talks a little bit about asset growth. I think this is important because it really demonstrates that even though we've seen asset growth among the banks in Florida, credit unions have continued to steadily increase assets. And it's been pretty clear to, I know, but not only us as an organization, but also to the state of Florida, that credit unions have continued to become the consumer's first choice for their banking needs as well for small businesses. There's, of course, many reasons for that when it comes to pricing of products, customer service, convenience, and other factors. So I think it's, once again, important to make sure that credit unions can continue to serve the consumers, and as needs grow through less banking options, make sure credit unions continue to provide a very affordable option for consumers. And this last slide that I wanted to share with you really talks, I think, to the amount of asset growth we've seen among state charter credit unions. We're only second now in Florida to California in total number of state charter assets. And I think what's important about that is looking at the amount of credit unions you're talking about. Yes, in California, there's much larger credit unions, but at the same time, it just kind of echoes the last slide that more and more consumers are finding out about credit unions and understanding that they're their best option for their consumer and small business banking. And also, I think it's important just to note is that, you know, we are a strong supporter, of course, of the dual charting system. I echo all the comments of Andrew during his last presentation. And it's important for us to make sure that we have a strong dual charting system, that we also have a federal charter and a regulatory structure that allows for federal credit unions to not have to convert to state charter, but can have opportunities to grow and be able to continue to serve their current members and future members as those members continue to migrate and look to different places to be able to live for various reasons. So with that being said, in closing, I just want to, once again, for that, on behalf of the LSCU and affiliates, voice our strong support for Dade County Federal Credit Union's application and ask the NCUA to consider approving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lapine. Next is Mr. Rod Skirvin, President, Broward County PBA. Mr. Skirvin.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Rod Skirvin, and I am a 4-year Navy veteran. I am also a certified police officer in the state of Florida and started my career in 1991. I currently hold the title of President of the Broward County Police Benevolent Association. I am in my second term of that, and I am in my first term as a Vice President of the Florida Police Benevolent Association. Together, we represent over 40,000 active law enforcement officers across the state, many of which live in the Miami-Dade and Broward County area. I am going to give you a more personal view of why we from the Broward County PBA believe that this expansion is not only a great idea for our members, but also for the community at large. The Broward County PBA is a full service nonprofit union for the police officers, law enforcement officers of Broward County. We work hand in hand with the South Florida, also known as the Dade County Police Benevolent Association. And we are currently in our 50th year representing law enforcement officers in Broward County. Some of the highlights that the Broward County Police Benevolent Association and I have instilled since my term started. We have launched several programs that are community impacting, and why that's important is you've already heard how generous the Dade County Federal Credit Union is to the community in Miami-Dade County, and we want to partner and help represent companies that give back to the community, as we also try to do with programs that we launched like Bigs in Blue. We partnered with Big Brothers Big Sisters of Broward County to have law enforcement officers be mentors to single parent youth of our county. And we also are involved in programs such as the Do the Right Thing, the backpack giveaways that happen before every school year, and all kinds of toy giveaway programs during the holiday season. We cannot do that alone. We must partner with other businesses in our communities that give to nonprofits to allow us to do that. And we feel it's very important that we are, as a police union, involved in the communities, especially with the youth of the communities, so that they can get a firsthand feel of police officers at an early age and how we help and interact with the communities. My personal experience being in the military, I can firsthand tell you that young military people that sign up, usually their first interaction with any kind of banking is through the credit union that is on the base. And that is important because they grow to be accustomed to the personalized service only a credit union can give. Once they are fulfill their commitment of military service, many of them transition into a law enforcement career. And they are expecting that same service. But unfortunately, Broward County is very unrepresented in the way of options for credit unions. So what do? They come to me as the union president asking for help, and where do we go? Why can't we get this level of service? What can you do to help us get this level of service? Well, and that's why I'm speaking here today on behalf of this expansion. We would also, I would also like to touch on the points. Because we're underserved, many of our members can talk to their cohorts in Miami-Dade County and reflect on the service they are getting, which is phenomenal. And just to give you a little background of how you've heard a couple speakers now speak of the population growth of Broward County, and really some of the history of when that really began to explode was in 1991 when Hurricane Andrew devastated Miami-Dade County. And unfortunately, that changed the landscape of that area, and it really changed policing in this area of South Florida, along with where people lived and how they commuted. Having been part of that myself, what had happened up until that point with policing is everybody during a hurricane was called to the police station prior to the event and was held till there was relief after the event, when power was restored and streets were cleared and they could go back to normal shifts. And it was 12 hours on and 12 hours off for everyone. Unfortunately, that hurricane directly hit the city of Homestead and completely wiped out every police vehicle that they had for the entire city. And they had to call for help from other agencies to come and police their city because they had no vehicles. I was part of that relief. I volunteered to go down to Homestead and work 12 on, 12 off, quite a long time until they could get back on their feet. But because of that, police cars were given to officers to take home and spread out all over the county so they would not be annihilated if an event like that happened again. What that also did was have many of our residents start moving into from Miami-Dade to Broward County, and that also spread out our police department personnel. We have currently hundreds of our members of Broward County Association that live in Miami-Dade County, and it would be the same for Miami-Dade County. They have hundreds that live in Broward County. These communities are so well connected. And to give you an example of that, just yesterday I had a meeting with 5 police officers. 2 of the 5 lived in Miami-Dade County and work in Broward County. And that's a very common theme throughout the Broward County police agencies. There really is, it's an invisible line for hiring, for working, for commuting, and for us doing business, restaurant, and pleasure for our membership. So I want to just say in conclusion that the thousands of members that we represent, really there is a need for more options, better service, and more community involvement from the banking industry or corporations like the Dade County Federal Union brings to the table, and we are in support of this 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Skirvin. Now I'd like to present Robert Fenner, President Chief Executive Officer, RMF Consulting LLC. Mr. Fenner?
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Director Ninachuk, members of the NCUA staff, and everyone else who's either participating in or observing this historic hearing today. Like the other presenters before me, I'm pleased to be able to participate and to speak in support of Dade County Federal Credit Union's application to expand its community by adding neighboring Broward County. Somebody somewhere along the way, I don't remember who asked me to speak about my background, so I'll do that very briefly. For those of you who aren't aware, I've worked in the credit industry for nearly 50 years. I started in 1974 as a staff attorney at NCUA. I worked in various roles in the general counsel's office for 37 years. I retired in 2011. At that time, I formed an LLC and began working with credit unions and credit organizations. Among other organizations, I served as an advisor to CU Collaborate. And it was in that capacity that a little over 2 years ago, I had occasion to have discussions with NCUA staff about the nature and the scope of this hearing today. And it's our understanding from those discussions that the hearing is limited, the focus of the hearing rather, is on whether Miami-Dade and Broward counties together comprise a well-defined local community within the meaning of NCUA's rules. I think a good starting point on that issue is to look at the Census Bureau's information. Census Bureau has designated both a 6-county combined statistical area and a 3-county core-based statistical area that run from south to north in a linear fashion with, as Patrick indicated, with the Atlantic Ocean bordering on the east and largely bordered by the Everglades on the west. In both cases, Miami-Dade is the southernmost county and Broward is the adjoining county to the north. And the Census Bureau defines a CBSA, a core-based statistical area, to include a county with a core and adjoining counties with a high degree of social and economic integration. So by including Miami-Dade and Broward in the same CBSA, the Census Bureau has determined that the two counties have a high degree of social and economic integration. That seems to me a good starting point and solid evidence that they're part of the same community. You can change to the next slide, please. I think it's especially important to note that another applicant could, if they chose to, designate an area, contiguous area that ran through any number of the 7 counties, as long as the population of under 2.5 million and the area did not improperly discriminated, would be a presumed community within NCUA's rules. Moreover, I think it's important to note that Miami-Dade and Broward counties have the highest poverty levels of any of the 6 counties in the CSA, and that Miami-Dade County has low income designation from NCUA, meaning the majority of their members are low income. Now, while I didn't play a significant role in the preparation of the application, I know that it provides substantial information to support the 13 criteria that an applicant needs to address in connection with an application for a community expansion that exceeds 2.5 million and that is not confined to a single city or county. It's my understanding, well, as Chris indicated, we believe that the application provides either most persuasive or persuasive evidence in at least 10 of the 13 criteria. To my knowledge, there's no numerical standard in the rules, but it seems clear that 10 out of 13 criteria in the persuasive or most persuasive category should satisfy the totality of the circumstances test and should show sufficient level of common interest and interaction to meet the requirements of Appendix 6 in NCUA's rules and NCUA's 2018 guidance on the use of the narrative approach. So that concludes my comments. In closing, I'd like to thank you for holding this first of its kind hearing. I'm confident that if you grant the application Dade County Federal Credit Union will continue with its excellent record of service in both Miami-Dade and Broward counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fenner. Now I'd like to invite Danya Dorman, Chief Executive Officer, African American Credit Union Coalition, to present. Ms. Dorman?
Thank you and good afternoon. And thank you also for this opportunity to present. I'm Danya Dorman and I serve as Chief Experience Officer for the African American Credit Union Coalition, a 501c3 professional nonprofit association that seeks to increase diversity and inclusion within the credit union community through advocacy and professional development. On behalf of the leadership of AACUC, we support AACUC member Dade County Federal Credit Union's field of membership expansion request into Broward County, Florida. As a seasoned credit union executive, it's my pleasure to present to you today and share why Dade County Federal Credit Union's field of membership expansion aligns, supports, and would enable AACUC to carry out its mission of advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. The mission of AACUC is to unite the credit union movement to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also to advocate for the 8th cooperative principle. In fact, AACUC is recognized as an industry leader for enabling credit unions to become more diverse and inclusive. We do this by promoting financial inclusion and professional development with our members and creating bridges between community-based organizations that help close the racial wealth gap. Next slide, please. In 2020, AACUC established the Commitment to Change Credit Unions Unite Against Racism initiative, focused on education, unification, conversations, and also investments that support a future where DEI can thrive in the credit union movement and also in our communities. We believe that credit unions are uniquely positioned to lead the United States in eradicating racism, as well as serving communities of color. In 2022, the National Credit Union Foundation Board of Directors awarded AACUC the prestigious Anchor Award for its leadership in unifying the credit union industry amid the pandemic and social, political, and economic unrest as part of our Commitment to Change initiative. Next slide. The Commitment to Change initiative, it is predicated on 4 tenets: diversity, equity, inclusion. Second, financial inclusion, including access to fairly priced financial services for underbanked and unbanked communities. Third, closing the racial wealth gap through financial education, small business acceleration, and home ownership. And fourth, community involvement, specifically supporting the advancement of low-income communities of color through a variety of means. These tenets are rooted in research and help our members like Dade County Federal Credit Union future-proof our communities as our demographics diversify. Next slide. The country's demographics are changing and require a focus on communities of color. In 2010 and between 2010 and 2019, communities of color all grew while the white population declined. In fact, the U.S. is projected to become a majority minority nation for the first time in 2044. While the non-Hispanic white population will remain the largest single group, there won't be a group that takes the majority. So keep in mind, minorities, who consist 37% of the population, are projected to be 57% in 2060, which is nearly 242 million people. Next slide, please. Now, if we drill down and isolate adult households, you'll find that these demographics are as diverse as its community. Here are a few noteworthy statistics from a recent Pew Research survey. First, 2/3 of Black adult households say they do not have an emergency fund or rainy day fund to cover 3 months of expenses in case of sickness, job loss, or economic downturn or other emergencies. Next, about 1 in 7 Black adults work more than one job, of whom 45% say they have a combined income because it's essential, while about 30% say that combined income help meet basic needs. Lastly, Black Americans are less financially secure compared to other Americans overall, with 60% saying that their household finances meet basic needs with a little left over, compared to 71%. And again, only 36% saying they have 3 months of emergency fund, compared to 54%. Next slide, please. As I previously mentioned, Black households are not a monolith, and disparities exist among the Black experience, largely due to income and economic inequality and educational attainment levels. So here on the screen, essentially 6 in 10 Black adults with lower incomes either say they don't have enough money to meet basic needs or are just meeting their basic needs. Black adults with higher incomes report a starkly different scenario. Only 4% of middle income and 1% with upper income say they don't have enough to meet basic needs. Next slide, please. Now let's drill down a final time at the local level, Broward County. Broward County is home to the largest number of Black residents in South Florida. The Urban League of Broward County's most recent State of the Black Broward report gives us a glimpse of opportunities for the economic, housing, and business implications of Black residents. First, income inequality among Black communities exists in the county, which negatively affects household income, higher poverty, and unemployment. Black home ownership rates also in Broward County are significantly lower, and home purchase loan denial rates are higher than white residents. Lastly, Black-owned businesses represent less than 20% of all minority-owned businesses in the county. So as you can see, there are great opportunities to drive financial inclusion, close the racial wealth gap, and improve the lives and outcomes of Black residents in Broward County. Next slide, please. We believe Dade County Federal Credit Union is the solution to do just that and meet this moment for Broward County's communities of color. Dade County Federal Credit Union is uniquely positioned to meet the diverse needs of the county's Black residents and further drive the 4 tenets of AACUC's Commitment to Change initiative. That is why we proudly support their efforts to expand their reach and impact to Broward County. Next slide. Dade County Federal Credit Union already demonstrates AACUC's Commitment to Change tenets within its existing footprint. With respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the credit union has joined the AACUC and participated in multiple events, including our annual conference. The credit union has also demonstrated its community involvement by embracing many youth programs, increasing efforts to provide financial literacy programs to children and young adults throughout the community, and implementing many new programs to help members with budgeting, debt consolidation, and savings plans. Next slide. With respect to financial inclusion and closing the racial wealth gap, Dade County Federal Credit Union collaborated with local CDFIs to administer the Reinvesting in Our Small Business Economy project, also known as RISE. Throughout its work, the organizations are able to raise funds to allow small businesses to have access to both a long-term loan fund and an emergency fund to help them weather future economic downturns or disruptions. So if the credit union has been able to do and accomplish this much in their existing county and existing footprint, imagine how residents in Broward County could also be uplifted in the same way. Next slide. In summary, as the nation diversifies, so do the needs of Broward County. Black residents of Broward County need support to level income inequality, increase home ownership, improve unemployment, as well as accelerate business opportunities. We must be intentional in serving communities of color to ensure financial products and services meet their needs, help close the racial wealth gap, and include these communities not only in accessing, but also actively participating in financial services. That is why Dade County Federal Credit Union's field of membership expansion request into Broward is a must. Dade County Federal Credit Union has a proven record of taking action to improve the lives of its members and creating opportunities for communities of color. Now it's time for them to do the same and even more for the residents of Broward County. Last slide. Thank you very much for your time, as well as your consideration of Dade County Federal Credit Union's field of membership expansion, as well as AACUC's support.
Thank you, Ms. Dorman. Now I'd like to present our last speaker, Jules Epstein-Hebert, Director of Membership Growth and Partnership Inclusive.
Thank you, Director Ninachuk, for holding this hearing and for this opportunity to comment and participate. We can just move to the next slide, please. Inclusive is a membership organization for credit unions committed to financial inclusion And this is a little bit of background on the work we've done and the advocacy that we do on behalf of the members of Inclusive and the communities that they serve. Next slide, please. Dade County has been an Inclusive member for several years and is one of 13 members of ours in the state of Florida. Again, this is just some of the demographics of our network, and clearly we work with overwhelmingly low-income designated institutions, CDFIs, and minority depository credit unions. We can go on to the next slide, please. Of course, if that wasn't clear, we have an interest in seeing Dade County's request approved. I think that the prior speakers, Mr. Fenner, Mr. Lapine, Mr. Morris, and Mr. Tissue, provided very compelling evidence for the continuity of Dade and Broward counties, but it's also clear that Dade County has been working to meet the needs of the underserved members of the Dade County, Miami-Dade County communities, and has demonstrated an ability and intent to serve Broward County as well. This is just information on the 7 tests for CDFI certification, and Dade County fulfills all these tests and exceeds them. They've been a CDFI certified institution for a number of years. And if we go on to the next slide, please, thank you. We'll see that they're also low income designated. They've been certified, as I said, since 2019. This image here is a map of, in purple shaded areas, the CDFI qualifying investment areas for Broward County. So you can see there's a significant amount of need, a significant amount of underserved and unbanked members of the population there. And Broward County has, as I said, the demonstratability and intent to serve these members of the community, but also they have the resources. They received a rapid response grant from the CDFI fund in 2021, in addition to the existing resources that the credit union has. And they can rapidly deploy those funds to provide capital and other resources to members of this expanded community. Next slide, please. Thank you. I think that's really all I have. I think the prior speakers did a great job of advocating on behalf of this request, and I just add my voice to that chorus. So thank you again. Thank you, Director Nanchuk and the NCUA for having this hearing and including Inclusive.
Well, thank you very much. All the presentations today were very informative. I want to thank you for your time, consideration, and dedication. As we mentioned during our practice session, this is the first public hearing that the agency has held on a field of membership. So you all are pioneers. Again, I really commend your dedication in pulling all this information together. The NCUA will make a determination on the application no sooner than 30 days after today's date. And again, thank you for your time. This is the end of the public hearing, and have a good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.